Hayom Yom, the Rebbe's teaching of the day, he says that we all need to know what ails us physically in order to heal ourselves physically. If we don't know what the ailment is, how could we ever get healed? So likewise, spiritually, we need to be aware of what our spiritual ailment is. Whether it's being slothful, lazy, being arrogant, what our issue is in order that we can bring spiritual healing to ourselves. We need to know that there is something, in fact, that needs to be fixed. That needs to be healed. We all have something. Unless you're righteous, so you've healed yourself. But otherwise, we need to know, just like we need to know our own virtues, we need to also know our own shortcomings, what needs healing in our lives. Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. And we share the Tanya today with Rusty in Texas. As in old days, actually, I think almost everybody that I mention is here day in, day out, which is humbling to me. Powerful on high and powerful down here below too. Brett in Pennsylvania, welcome. Terrence in Melbourne, Australia, where it's very light. June is also in Australia. John is in North Carolina joining us. Liva and Davida, good folk in New York. Jerry is joining us in Texas. Vaclav is in the Czech Republic. Welcome. Clem also in Australia, Brisbane. Welcome. Good evening. Good night. Louise, another Australian. In Sydney. We got more Australians here right now than anybody else. That's amazing. I mean, from any other particular place. Rabbi in Morocco, representing the entire Morocco. It might even be the whole Africa. I don't know if anybody else. We'll see if anybody else is coming from Africa. Johan in Boca Tov in California. Jackie is in Charlotte, North Carolina. Amy in Colorado. Boca Tov. Clem, what we mentioned already, yes. Rena, also in Colorado. 2 Coloradans. In Washington, we have Dana. We have Chabad Celeste in Boulder, Colorado. Sandy in Michigan. Virginia, fellow Canadian in Calgary, the only Canadian right now. Denise in New Jersey is with us. Diane in Arizona, always. Stan, good afternoon, in London, England, representing Europe here. Alice is in Baltimore, BIT, Canadian training. Daphne is joining us in South Carolina, having a marvelous Monday. What else would be on a Monday? The Monday morning blues? No, not if you're learning Tanya. Juan is in Tampa, Florida. Leah is also in Florida, joining us. Vincent in Alberta. Oh, we have another Canadian. 2 Albertans, actually. Tim and Boca Tov to you in Texas. Beautiful. Instagrammers, we've got them. Akoy in Lima, Peru. Jennifer in Minnesota. Carlos in Brazil. Rachel in South Carolina. Oh, we have Hamid in Montreal. Real one. Carlos in Chile, that's right. That's what it is. Lily, welcome. Lily Amuna. Natalie in Brazil. Elise is in Georgia. And we have Michelle with us. Okay. Beautiful. Inclusion is a big thing today. To be inclusive of those that are not like us. Where does that begin? Inclusion. How can we be inclusive? Well, everything begins in the divine, in the creative process. So let's get back to the creative process over here. The name Elohim, of God, as we know there's several names of God. This name indicates, as we've said, the attribute of Gevura. Gevura, restraint. Tzimtzum means to contract, to hold back, restrain. The numeric value of this is Hateva, nature. They're both 86. 40, 50, 55, 85, 86. That's 130. That numeric value of 1, numeric value of 30, value of 5, 10, and 40. 86, which is the numeric value of Hateva, which means nature. Why is that? What does it mean that it's nature? Nature means a repetitiveness, right? Sunrise, sunset. We call that nature, right? The law of gravity. Ooh. That's nature. It's repeated over and over. There's no sense of wonder. No thought of the divine power or life force that is within it, because it's concealed. All we know is the order of things in a repeated, constant way. And that's what the divine name Elohim does. It conceals the supernal light of God that brings into existence and gives life. That supernal light of God is what's creating something from nothing that's more wondrous than the splitting of the sea. And the name Elohim is concealing that light, that it's not visible to created beings, that it appears as if the world exists without having a constant renewal, that this is the way God programmed it. The laws of nature, immutable, that are independent of any supernatural influence. Right? Even though we perceive renewal, right, with the seasons, for example, but that's the way of nature, Hateva in Hebrew, that the laws are seemingly immutable. And that's what the word teva in Hebrew means: entrenched and submerged. Entrenched meaning that this is just the way it is. It just doesn't change. It's immutable. Submerged because it's concealing. What's it concealing? The divine life that God utters to give existence every moment, something from nothing. That's the name Elohim, what it's doing. And as we have learned previously, what is it in the metaphor? It is the shield and the sheath of the name Havaya, of God's name of constant renewal and creation of something of what is it, and what is the Shem Elohim concealing? That power of God that's creating something out of nothingness in a consistent, constant way. Now, why is it doing it? Why is name Elohim doing this? Because if not, we would be totally nullified, like the ray of sun within the sun. That's what it would be. And that would be, then, of course, we wouldn't have freedom of choice. We would be able to serve, to choose to serve or not to serve, right? But what comes out over here is you got the power of Shem Havaya, the power of Shem Elohim, and we may see them as competing powers, so to speak. One's revealing, one's concealing. Could make that mistake and may have an appearance as such. It's not at all. This quality of gevura, of the self-restraint, of contraction, of holding back, is actually an aspect of chesed. It's a part of kindness. Because the ultimate intent of the tzimtzum is actually kindness. It's actually kindness. It's what we call gevura shebechesed. Gevura that's included in chesed. So they're actually inclusive, mutually inclusive of each other. The two qualities. It's like sunglasses, right? Actually, these in the sun do become, right? What is it? What is it sunglasses do? They filter out the sun, right? That it should be just enough rays for your eyes to be able to handle. So on the one hand, it's letting in. On the other hand, it's filtering out. And they're working together. Well, let's take a better example. A baby that's been held by a mother, by a father, cuddled, loved, and now you put that child down and remove yourself. So what does a child feel when it's being cuddled? Feeling the love, the chesed, the kindness that's being done, taking care of it in every manner. Then you put the child down and you remove yourself. What is the child feeling? Distance. Distance. A concealment of sorts, right? Well, the hug isn't there. But is the hug there? Absolutely. Because why is the parent doing it? Why is the mother doing it at that moment? Because the child is now old enough to learn to walk. So you put the child down, remove yourself a bit, and put out your arms. Come. The child might feel a distance, might feel no longer the warmth of that hug and that loving kindness. But the parent is motivated by what? What's the mother motivated by? Loving kindness, even though the act is one of distance, of removing yourself. That's the idea of gevura that's in chesed. Chesed of chesed, kindness of kindness, is the coddling. There's a time for that. What's the proof? Well, because there is kindness within kindness. But then there is two opposites that can come together that are mutually inclusive. And in the divine order of things, it's with Shem Havai, Shem Elohim, the name Havai and name Elohim, of chesed, of the equality, the attribute of chesed, of loving kindness, and the attribute of gevura, refrain, holding back, tzimtzum. That the two powers, or the two qualities rather, are really mutually inclusive of each other. And the desire to hold back is only motivated by chesed, by a loving kindness. Because God, when He creates the world, He does it out of kindness. That's why he creates the world. And that's the meat of kindness, and it's creating ex nihilo something, the word of God, the breath of God, that's expressing that kindness in the act of creating something from nothing at every moment. But part of that kindness that's inclusive is the gevura that is motivated by that kindness too, because it's part of the building blocks of creation. Just like the mother who removes herself, it's part of the building blocks of that child in their formation, in their development rather, from a coddled baby to a baby now that can take their first steps. So that's the beginning of mutual inclusion, is on the divine order of things. And of course for ourselves, when we understand that, we can have a mutual inclusion of two opposite movements of the soul and bring them together. And then that will allow to play it out on the field too, in real time. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? Any thoughts? Natalie, the distance and the disconnection consist of what's called trauma. Actually, thank you, Natalie, for bringing that up. Right. Trauma is because in that moment we see the disconnect. Right? If we recognize that perhaps it's not a disconnect, and thank you, Natalie, for bringing that up. Now, the person who perpetrated, maybe they have a disconnect, and quite probably, if it's something that is negative, motivated by negativity, then yes, there is a disconnect. There's an ailment that they have that they need to deal with. But because someone else has an ailment that they need to deal with, does that mean I have to accept it traumatically? Their ailment? Their lack? Their shortcomings? Their things that they need to fix for themselves in their lives? So because they hurled an insult to me, or they distanced from me and did something that was not nice, perhaps, or even worse, do I have to take it that way? Well, if it's at the same time that you recognize that the power that they have is coming from God, and that power of concealment is really a power of God, that is, yes, it is, what's the word, coming through the choice of a person, an ill choice, yes, but the power to do that is a power that's coming from God. So when we recognize that even though this is not something that's coddling me at this moment, this is not something that's loving kindness, but not everything is chesed shebechesed, not everything is kindness within kindness. There can be gvura within kindness. So there can be something that is concealing, very much concealing, that is coming from God. If we recognize that what is happening to me is because God allowed this to happen to me, and it's His attribute of gvura, and even though it may be painful and even hurtful, but that doesn't mean that God is not motivated by chesed, by kindness. In fact, He is. And the fact that we recognize that will give us an opportunity to not only not be traumatically affected by the negativity of another individual, but that we can actually use it in serving something positive that will come out of it, within me or within another, or whatever the case may be. Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Natalie. I hope that's actually a pretty powerful idea. So when God dresses in nature, Elohim, John is asking, and we get flood, earthquake, or a flat tire, how do we glean the message he is giving? Well, first of all, and to continue the thought, John, thank you. First of all, just the awareness that this is Gevurah of God. It is his restraining power. And to know that it is really mutually inclusive of his divine kindness, the awareness of that will at least take off the edge, take off maybe the trauma of it, and will at least allow us to say, okay, let me, what do I got to do here? What do I got to do here? I've told this story before, but it kind of reflects this idea. After the Yom Kippur War in 1973, which was too close for comfort, as the Jewish nation was caught by surprise on Yom Kippur, and too many deaths as a result of it being caught off guard. When the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, Rabbi Israel Meir Lau, came to the Rebbe thereafter for a private audience, he later became the chief rabbi of Israel. Today his son is the chief rabbi of Israel. So he came to a private audience. The Rebbe asked him, "No, vasot menoifen gas. What's the word on the street? How are people after the war? How, what's the feeling? What's the sentiment out there?" So he said, "Mifrekt was wird sein." We're asking what's going to be. And it was because it was just too close to their comfort. Israel cannot afford to lose a war. It doesn't lose a war. It loses everything. God forbid. The Rebbe became very earnest, very serious. He says, a Jew doesn't ask what's going to be. They ask, what do we got to do? That's the story. Let me explain, based on what we just learned. What's going to be is like saying, this was Gvura that's not motivated by Chesed, and we don't know, maybe there's going to be a Gvura, there's going to be, a withholding of God that, who knows, maybe it'll be worse next time. But if you know that the Gvura is motivated by Chesed, that the restraint, the holding back, the concealment of God, that it seems like nature is taking as its course, is really motivated by his loving kindness. So you're not going to ask what's going to be. What's going to be is going to be loving kindness. Now let me do what I got to do to reveal that loving kindness of God that will be secure. In that instance, how we're going to be secure. Because ultimately that security is going to be coming from God, but let me do my part, whatever I got to do to make the vessel for the blessing. So likewise, anything that traumatic happens, well, what's going to be? There's a flood, there's a earthquake, or whatever. That's as if this came from an act of gvura, of nature, that is, and that's how we perceive, because we see duality in the world, we see diversity, so we see, up, there's down, there's right, there's left, there's light, and there's dark, there's good, and there's bad, and this was bad. I mean, again, a person can choose bad, but we're talking about the choosing of bad is only ultimately that God gives the power. So that power ultimately is coming from chesed. It's motivated by loving kindness. We don't see it because it's so concealed, the light of God that is animating this moment, so we don't perceive it. But if we know that that's the truth, then we don't ask from this traumatic experience, oh, what's going to be? Just let's do what we got to do to make this good, to reveal goodness here. Period. That's real therapy. I'm sorry, but I don't know if maybe that helps. I hope it does. David, does Hashem hold back, restrain himself so that they have the opportunity to free choice and run back to him? Isn't there a better way for him if we just stayed by his side? By his side, out of route. Stand by his side, we'd be like angels, and we would see the light of God and be motivated by it, inspired by it. But we're in a world that we don't see the light of God, that we have to seek for it. As we spoke in the previous chapter, this is the beginning of chapter 6, spoke in the previous chapter, that God gives the quality and the attribute of compassion, and that is reflected by the righteous, holy people, holy, devout people of the Torah, that in them you could see the light of God and that there's something beyond nature that they reflect, as in their Rebbe, of course. So, that's our job, is to reveal the concealment. That really God is there in that moment. That's what we're here for, right? Beautiful. Thank you all for the wonderful questions and engagement. Okay, thank you, John. Oh, yeah, you're asking, is it better to seek it than to be like angels? So there was once a young man wrote to the Rebbe, life it's such a hard struggle, Rebbe. It's so difficult. He says, why didn't God make us more angelic? You know, it would be so much easier. That we have to fight the battle every day. You know, it comes to your prayers, your mind goes adrift. You gotta fight. It comes to learn Tanya, and you know, the other things going on that it's hard to make it concentrate. And it comes to giving charity, and you know, I'd rather buy this for myself. Such a struggle. Why didn't God make me more angelic so I wouldn't have to struggle so much? So Rebbe responded, if you take a picture of a beautiful, you know, scene, be it a forest, be it a lake, sunset, whatever it is, take a picture of it, or a painting. Dollar for dollar, pound for pound, or picture versus the painting, what gets more money? What has more value in the eyes of people? For the most part. Obviously, sometimes it's not the case, but you know, depending who the photographer and the painter is, of course. Painter is me, the photographer is some whatever. Obviously, the photographer is going to get a lot more because I am not a good painter at all. Or I haven't developed the skill yet. So of course the painting's going to go a lot more. But why? The picture is more perfect than the painting. The painting is an approximation, not perfect. Because we don't want what's perfect. What's perfect is like the angel's perfect. But what's human is that when a person, a human being, puts in their heart and soul in the painting, so their heart and soul is in that painting. Their perspective on how they see the world is in that painting. Their feelings about that scene or whatever it is in the painting. There's a piece of them there. That fetches a lot more. It's more authentic, maybe, shall we say. Even though it's not, it's more authentic of the person rather than authentic of the scene itself. Of course, the picture is more precise and more, shall we say, authentic, but so what God wants, he doesn't want a picture perfect. He wants a flawed person as we have, the ailments that we, the things that we need to fix in us, the struggle that we have with it. That fetches a lot more for God. That's what he wants. Yeah. All right. Amazing as always. Thank you, Davida, Natalie, John, for wonderful, wonderful questions and engagement. All right. We had a wonderful class last night that whoever missed it, you can get on Chabad ZK, on Facebook, Chabad ZK. Well worthwhile. TRC, Tanya Rabbi Community last night was very special. We'll have another one this Thursday. Questions though, so get your questions ready. Get your questions ready. And Rambam is coming up right now. The laws of Shabbos. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from Chabad Tzrich and Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have an amazing, great day. Thank you for being part of this wonderful day in, day out journey. By the way, we started at 7:05 in the morning with Hasidus. We're learning some very powerful stuff. 7:05, that's on Zoom or on Facebook, Chabad ZK. And then we have Chumash Rashi every day around 8:40. And then we come here. And now we go to the Rambam. Have an amazing, great day.